All right. Hi, Micah.
Hi, Shannon. How are you?
Doing good. Happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday. I'm so excited we got together to talk about mentors a little bit.
Yeah. So, how to get a mentor, why you need a mentor, what is a mentor?
Above, and is it really worth having a mentor?
Yeah. Good question. What do you think?
Well, before we start that, I wanted to ask you, do clients ask you this? Does this come up in your coaching where people feel, I guess the reason I'm asking is I often have clients that are younger and they feel intimidated by this process. And so when I hear about mentors, it's like, do I have to have one? How do I get one?
Do I have that one? You know what I find is that it feels very daunting in terms of how do I even go about that? How would I, even find someone who would want to do that? And so that it's almost like a lot of mystique around mentorship if there isn't some sort of, organized structure within your organization that connects you to a mentor or is in place to, help you to navigate that.
Yeah. And every now and then people have organic luck too, right? So if it isn't one of those two things, then I think people feel lost. But let's start off maybe talking about what is a mentor?
Yeah.
You know, why is it important to your career to find mentorship? What do you
Yeah. Well, and I also thought this was interesting. I was not super aware of the difference in language around mentorship versus sponsorship.
Yep.
And this idea that a mentor is there to kind of teach and guide and offer wisdom or, share experiences. Whereas a sponsorship is someone who actually has a stake in being able to promote you or, help you to kind of grow in your career. And so not grow, this is not the right word, but, progress in your career, I guess.
Yeah.
So distinguishing that I thought was interesting. And then, what are your thoughts on what exactly is a mentor?
Yeah, I think you were starting to define it in the way that I understand it. It's definitely a person who is a caring individual that cares about your career development and doesn't have a stake in it, but they have experiences that are, important for you to learn from. They can also help you to strategize what you need to learn in terms of skills and things. So they have some knowledge there, right? And the biggest thing that I learned when I was studying this is they can be your cheerleader. That's
We all
really
need a cheerleader.
especially in our careers. Like we don't know if
Yes.
we're doing this correctly.
Yep. Yeah. I think too, just for a minute, we can share, throughout the building of our business and our path, as we've navigated, Shinebright, we've had several mentors throughout the years. Do you want to share anything that felt important or memorable in terms of that experience or how we found them?
Yeah, well, I was just, when you brought that up, had a thought. So one of our mentors actually was a Gallup researcher, and Gallup is, of course, the company that has created the assessment we use, right?
You might
And,
be watching. Hi, Jim.
hi, Jim. Hi, Dr. Johnson, Dr. J. I actually went and took a class and went to a conference at Gallup's headquarters and then put that on my LinkedIn. And then Dr. Johnson reached out to us and we just were so open to chatting with him. And he was giving us some time to come down and talk about what we were doing at that time. And we were quite fortunate that it was such an organic way to find a mentor. But his insight, his recommendations, his advice, I mean, that really drove a lot of the early decisions that we made that led to many of our successes, I would say. What about you?
Yeah, no, such an important figure and still is in terms of just at this point being such a strong supporter of our work. And, he saw us at kind of the beginning stages. And so just always appreciate his cheerleading of our work. But yeah, I think especially as an entrepreneur, so much of your path is undefined and so much of it is, kind of trial and error. And so we were at the time trying to build a curriculum and his input and kind of validation in terms of like, hey, you're doing good work. This is important from someone who, had expertise and knowledge in a space that we were trying to kind of build something in felt so important and motivating to keep going.
Yeah. And I think what you said is so important, like his validation of what we were thinking. And Yeah, he inspired so much of our early steps and always encouraged us to move forward. So when I think of a mentor, he's the first person in my life that pops into my mind.
Yeah. And I think this is an interesting point because we've actually had several mentors throughout the years, and they've been for different things. So his was a little bit more content based. We shared a love for strengths and the strengths finder and positive psychology, and he had a lot of knowledge and experience. But then we also sought out mentors who had more expertise and know-how in building a business and kind of the intricacies of running a business and, you know, what that looks like. And so we had several different types of mentors, which I think is an important note about how you think about mentorship.
Yeah, I think keeping that open mind that throughout your life and your career, you will have many mentors, and to be open to the different kinds that you need. You're not going to know everything. I feel like there's this thing that happens. People graduate college, they get into their first job, and they're like, I need a mentor. And Sheryl Sandberg talks about this in the book Lean In.
Yeah.
She's a young woman who came to her and said, will you be my mentor, when she was at Google? And Sheryl had never talked to her before, knew nothing about her. And she said, well, why me? And the young woman said, well, I need a mentor, and, you know, you're successful. And so I thought I'd ask. And I think that the young woman wasn't trying to, you know, go out and reach out towards just the most successful person, but she had felt a lot of pressure that this is the way I was going to succeed, and I better find one. So I better go find the best one. Actually, not how you want to find a mentor. And it doesn't have to feel like that much pressure if you spend some time thinking about why you're doing it.
Yeah. Oh, I have such empathy for her, and I love her gumption, which is admirable. But I think, yeah, that brings up a lot of points in terms of, I think maybe the first step, if you're at a point in your career or in building your business where you're feeling like you'd like some guidance, or there's a goal that you have in mind that feels maybe quite big or, you know, overwhelming in some way, that could maybe be an indicator that it might be time to bring on a mentor or start looking for a mentor as you're working towards this specific goal or are in a particular maybe growing or developing phase of, you know, where you're at on your path.
100%. And I think when you're making those goals and thinking about what you want to accomplish, it can also really help to answer what type of mentor you might be looking for.
Exactly.
And one thing that that I researched and read too, I was just sharing with you, is that often we do what that young woman did. We go to like whoever's at the top and ask for their mentorship because they're in the limelight or they're the first person that comes to mind. But really, if we're looking about how we want to develop in the next 5 years, we should just look at someone often who's, you know, 5 years ahead of us, maybe 10 years ahead of us. And it's helpful if they're in the same kind of career path, trajectory, or industry, so they have some of those experiences that you're looking to gain.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, is like bringing some thoughtfulness to this, right? I remember listening to a podcast, and I'm going to blank on this. I'll try to put it in the comments, but there was a woman who actually has started an app that she sells to organizations that helps to create a mentorship kind of matching system within organizations. But she was kind of chatting about what she had seen, and what was motivating her to create this app was a lot of like, carelessness in terms of how to connect people or how to go about this. And, you know, it's often kind of like, I'm a woman, so who's the other woman, you know, that's 5 years ahead, or I'm a person of color, so who's the other person of color? And that's not enough, right? So being really thoughtful about, what am I hoping to learn? Who do I admire and why? What are some of the goals that I have in mind, and who maybe has had some similar experiences? And it goes beyond just kind of some of those, you know, we're both women, you know, whatnot. So bringing some thoughtfulness to why what you hope to learn allows you to pinpoint, like you said, who would be the ideal mentor.
Yeah. And you know what? Process is important to anything you want to accomplish. And this mentoring and finding one, it's the same thing. So if you go through and you think through those types of experiences, the type of person, and then you start to make a list of potential mentors, then you can really step back and see, okay, who is at the top of that list? And not everyone you're going to ask is actually going to say yes. And it takes time to find someone you get in flow with. So being diligent, making a list, and actually maybe adding to it too throughout your career, right, can help you then to be thoughtful when you go about asking and trying to woo someone to be.
Yeah, and that's a great term, because I was kind of thinking about dating, rather than going in for the marriage proposal, right? Getting someone to make a commitment, at first meet, doing a soft entry. So if you already know the person, maybe starting with, would you be open for, a half hour coffee, or, a half hour Zoom? I'd love to chat through some of my, goals that I'm working on, or, share a little bit about where I'm in my career. And I really admire your career path, and I would love some input, and just kind of see how that first meeting goes. And if it's someone you don't know, but you are admiring from afar, asking for just an informational interview, right, as a start, right? Same kind of thing, a specific ask of, do you have 20 minutes for a Zoom where I could, learn a little bit and ask you a few questions. I admire you for these reasons, and would really love your input on this. So, starting with kind of a soft ask. And then if it goes well, if there's a connection, if it feels like there's something there, then follow up with, would you be open to a mentor relationship?
Yep, 100%. And sometimes it's really nice too to put some parameters around the type of mentorship. We were talking about this a little bit.
Yep.
In terms of like, hey, would you be willing to mentor me for a year? I'd really love to, meet once a month, and, kind of set up some idea of how it might go for that person. So it doesn't feel like they're taking you on for a lifetime, but also because you're going to need different mentors throughout your life too. You're not going to need to have the same person next to you in every step of the way. So being cognizant of that for their understanding of what you're looking for, and also for kind of keeping a realistic approach for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think people feel safe with boundaries, right? So like Micah said, it's like, if you're just like, hey, would you be my mentor? This person's like, oh my gosh, what does this mean? Do I have to mentor this person for every week for the rest of my life? Right. And that feels very overwhelming. So putting parameters around, excuse me, I have an itch, I'm working towards this next promotion, would you be open to mentoring me for 6 months? I would love maybe once a month or bi-weekly, half-hour phone calls or Zooms, and this is the specific goal and the specific content that I would love to be able to be, chatting with you about. So then the person knows the what, the why, the when, the how, right? And that allows them to make a decision as to like, yes, I have room for this on my plate. Yes, I have interest. This is something I would love to share or talk about. Or, you know what, I don't have time for that, or I don't have bandwidth for that. And you can move on, to the next person that you could ask.
Yeah, 100%. And that'll happen. People are busy, but what this really sounds like you're describing as our favorite thing to talk about, which is networking.
Funny, that's our favorite thing. I know.
It's about building
right.
relationships, right?
Yeah.
And it's about being authentic and being intentional and not wasting people's time. And I just think of my husband, because I think he's just a natural networker.
He is.
And throughout his career, which is in the video game industry and sales, he has always kept in contact with people he worked with. That he liked working with, of course, right? And that has, now that we're old, that has really proven.
Hey,
you're young and wonderful, but
you always say we're not old yet.
I know. Oh, sorry. Now I've turned the corner with the rest of us.
Great.
But he's in a mature place in his career, is what I meant. And I have seen him call on these mentors in different ways where he can check in and say like, wow, I'm in this new company that's growing this way. And you've got experience with that. I'd love to pick your ear around this. And that's not the same consistent mentorship, but it is about keeping those authentic relationships and knowing where you could ask for help when you need it from people who've been successful in your life.
Yeah, he is really wonderful at that. And if you can think about it as relationship building, just a few thoughts about kind of where someone might find someone. And then, we can finish up with like, what does it look like to be a good mentee?
Mhm.
You and I used an organization to find a few mentors that is still up and running and is a free organization. It's called micromentor.org. And you can go in, it's kind of like a dating service type thing where you put up a profile if you're an entrepreneur or are in a particular field, and then it will match you with people who are interested in mentoring you, who maybe have similar experience or worked in the same industry. And you don't have to take the first person that responds, but we had maybe a handful of mentors that we all worked with there. And then what are some other ways that someone could identify or pinpoint a mentor?
Yeah, as I was saying, sometimes people you've worked with
Yeah.
are a couple steps ahead. Keeping in contact and in touch with managers that you really enjoyed working with or that you were inspired by their career path. Those are a couple of ways.
Yeah.
And you also mentioned kind of reaching out to people you may not know. And this is very similar to, well, just on LinkedIn and figuring out who has a career trajectory or is doing some things that is inspiring to you and that you admire, and reaching out to those people too. But again, keep in mind, you don't want to go sky high. You want to make sure that the people you reach out to are a few steps ahead or are moving in the direction you want to go, or have had a specific success that you're interested in. That can help you kind of keep it a little more contained,
Mm-hmm.
and related to exactly what you want to accomplish with that mentor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One other idea I think that it could also be helpful if this makes sense for your industry is like a professional networking, or industry type events, right? So if you're in an industry like tech, I know has a ton of like industry specific, or video games, right? So you're maybe at like a conference, or you're at like a training of some sort, or it's an industry networking. This is a really good place to just kind of meet, do some networking, and kind of see expanding your horizons in terms of other people who are outside of maybe your organization or your current network, and a good way to kind of break some ice and build some connections and see if there's anyone that you can connect with that way that you might want to reach out to for a more formalized relationship.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. So how do you be a good mentee after you find your mentor?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good thing to just chat about for a minute, because we don't often think about like, what's my role in this? And I think it might be helpful in terms of mindset, because I know a lot of people feel kind of similar with networking. Like it's so uncomfortable to just be asking this person, and what am I bringing to the table? And so to be thoughtful about how do I want to show up in this relationship, so it's actually something that the other person gets maybe some satisfaction or enjoyment out of as well, might make you feel like, okay, I'm bringing something to the table versus like just mentor me, and I'm kind of not a participant in this process.
Mhm. No, 100%. And I think it starts very basically by making sure that you're being thoughtful and that the niceties that are expected, like a thank you note and those types of things, and reaching out on maybe birthdays or work anniversaries and things like that, is about how really to nurture any relationship. But you might not see this person all the time too, right? You're going to be checking in and out depending on how the two of you figure out the plan for the menteeship or mentorship. But making sure you're checking in and being thoughtful on special occasions is a simple way, but it can go beyond that too. And that can be by keeping abreast of what they're succeeding in their career. Sometimes commenting on their LinkedIn and things like that might help to bring some attention to the good work they're doing or the success they're doing. Really staying engaged with what's going on with them too, and trying to interact there any way you can that feels authentic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. I don't think I would have thought of that. So I think that's a nice way to be supportive in your own way. If you can't, be their mentor, right? How can you be a supporter or a cheerleader? The other thing that I think is helpful is you taking the lead with setting the agenda. So maybe a week ahead of time, you already have a scheduled on the calendar, monthly meeting or whatever schedule you've decided upon, and saying, here are the 4 questions that I have, or this is the topic that, I'd really love to discuss. So, again, boundaries, some structure, giving this person, if they're maybe really busy or they have it a lot on their plate, now they know what to expect. They can maybe think through a little bit what you might be asking or what would be helpful to share with you. And again, it just allows it to be contained a little bit. So it's not this like they're showing up every month and it's like, who knows where this is going to go or whatnot. And also, I think you can leave some room for, creating a relationship that feels right for the 2 people that are in it. But I like that idea of taking the lead of offering to set an agenda, so that person doesn't feel like they also have to come up with things either.
Yeah, you want to make it seamless for them in any way you can. And one other thing I think is a really good way to be a mentee is to think about how you can pay it forward in the future. So when you have your success, when you push down that career path and someone reaches out to you, that you can also share back that insight and advice and expertise. And I feel like that's kind of inspiring to think about as you're going through it in your younger career, and also to share that with your mentor, because that means that really their work and their inspiration gets carried on even beyond just what you 2 are doing for your career.
Yeah, I love that. And that's always kind of a nice way to look at it. 2 last things in terms of being a good mentee: be open to feedback, right? So be willing to kind of hear not only, the compliments and the good stuff, but also to maybe hear some tough feedback, maybe to, hear like, hey, I'm noticing a pattern or, whatnot. So creating a space where that mentor feels like they can be honest with you. And, those sessions could be productive. And then also not turning it into a therapy or vent session. So, it's okay to kind of say, I'm feeling frustrated about this, but, again, being thoughtful and mindful about this person's time, giving them just, venting about how frustrated or annoying your boss is or your colleague is or, whatnot, and not really asking specific productive questions is actually probably quite exhausting for that other person. So how do you make it a productive versus, I'm just going to drain on this person?
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. And I do think that, challenges will come up. You will be talking about things you're facing, but making sure that you do not do that overwhelming just complaint session is really important to focus on not doing. I think we naturally do that often. So that's a big tip. Write that one down.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, that was kind of all we wanted to share today. Just a little thoughts on mentorship. Micah also did a longer video on YouTube if you want to dive into everything she has to share about mentorship. But hope that was helpful, and we'll see you back here soon.
Very soon. Take care, everyone.
Okay. Take care. Bye-bye.